What's up? Wednesday, talking Vols once again this morning. Going to have a big show because we've got some information about what really hit the internet and sprinted off yesterday with Dan Patrick reporting and telling his national audience that the Tennessee football program was using McDonald's bags to give money to recruits and players. So we have done some investigation and some reading and phone calls into this, and we've got the truth behind what Dan Patrick is saying about the Vols McDonald's bag money. So we'll discuss that. I'll also tell you where the Vols actually started to get sloppy when it comes to recruiting practices under Jeremy Pruitt. We all know Jeremy Pruitt has been fired, but that has not stopped there from being a PR disaster on Rocky Top. You see the Florida basketball team absolutely waxing the Vols on the court last night, and then tweet out a picture of they're loving it, right? So you've got the McDonald's memes going all over the place, the new Happy Meal, as Rick says. So we'll discuss that, and then we'll ask a question: who is most to blame for this PR disaster the Vols are going through this morning? So we'll discuss that. Then, Zach, as we mentioned yesterday, we each have 3 candidates on our hot board for the Vols head coaching job. Then we will make our prediction on what we think will actually happen and who the hire will be with this. So then throwing shade on a Wednesday, as always, Keelan says, I thought we were talking Titans today. No, that's on Titans Thursday. Today is Wednesday. So Titans Thursday, we'll have some good conversation, including Phillip Rivers and A.J. Brown's surgeries and live videos from post-op rooms. That was interesting. But, Zach, we're going to have a big show today talking about this Vols drama, as is day 3 of the coaching search, and it's just going to get wilder from here.
Yeah, and this story has taken off and has gone to places that I don't think at the beginning of the week that we would have thought it would go to, but here we are. And we do have a bit of information. Austin, you did some research yesterday, and I think it's very important, right? This is a part of our job is to get the truth out there. And when these things happen, everybody's firing off different things and opinions. So we'll dive into that very shortly. Before we get going, we broadcast live every single morning at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. We have that quadruple stream, that quad stream going. But before we get going, please share the broadcast, share the show. Bottom right corner of your screen, if you're watching on Twitter, you can share and retweet us. We need to pop up in your Twitter followers timeline. That would help us out a great deal. Also on Facebook, bottom left corner of your screen, share now to public. Sharing is caring. We need to pop up in your Facebook friends newsfeed. So distribute the show for us. And I'm sure maybe one of your Facebook friends or Twitter followers would like to know the information that we have that we will reveal here shortly. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, Austin, let's get this party started on a Wednesday.
Yep, let's do it officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports. I'm Austin Stanley. He is Zach Bingham. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at A to Z Sports, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch at A to Z Sports and A to Z Sports Nashville. We're Nashville's on-demand sports talk network, and we go live every weekday morning at 8 Central Time. Got to thank our sponsors because they make everything happen for our show, for our business, and for you guys. Renters Warehouse Nashville. To become a rent estate mogul, renterswarehouse.com is where to go to find out how much your home can rent for. Mandu, the Pulse of Fitness, where one 15-minute workout equals 5+ hours in the weight room. Mandu.com, your first workout is absolutely free. The Tucker Agency, to save you money on your personal insurance, head to tuckertn.com. Calvin and Subtle for your brand new hardwood floors and finishings at calvinandsubtle.com. And the Bone and Joint Institute, boneandjointtn.org, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care, boneandjointtn.org. So, Zach, we will talk a lot. Like this is, I'll talk about McDonald's. There is a McDonald's on the Strip in Knoxville. So hearing that initially from Dan Patrick made me think, well, I could see it. But then that's not exactly what we're here to do, is just say, well, I could see it. We're here to dive deeper into that. So, Zach, before I tell you the information that I found about the McDonald's story, let's go ahead and play you guys the clip from the Dan Patrick show yesterday about McDonald's and what he was hearing from a source about the Tennessee Volunteers.
Tennessee Volunteers with Jeremy Pruitt got fired, and Phil Fulmer, the athletic director, I said they were going to go after him as well from my source. He decided to retire, and whoever goes in has got some hurdles probably with the NCAA that they're going to have to navigate. The people who are going to make this pick, this choice for the next head coach, the Haslam brothers, Peyton Manning is going to be involved in it, reportedly going to be involved in it. And I was told that, there's a few things that are going on here. And I asked my source, I said, how did they get these assistant coaches on recruiting violations? And he said, well, they put money into McDonald's bags and gave them to the recruits when they came on campus. Some of the campus visits were not organized, or they were not above board, but they were handing out cash. I don't know if it was through the drive-through.
That's a Happy Meal.
So you literally had bagmen, and they put the cash in McDonald's bags and handed it to the recruits. My source said they were so in your face with this. They weren't even trying to hide it. And that's where my source said Tennessee got sloppy. Georgia has gotten sloppy, but there's been no word on the NCAA looking at Georgia. But Tennessee, they got sloppy, and they were handing out cash in McDonald's bags. I haven't been to McDonald's in a long, long time. But
I used to get those little figurines. Definitely not cash.
So that's from Dan Patrick Show. That video brought to you by Wilson County Hyundai, wilsoncountyhyundai.com. So look, the jokes write themselves, right? Supersize my bag, says Louie. There's a lot of jokes from that. So what did I do? I tried to call some people that I trust and found out, and I'll pull a Dan Patrick and read from my phone, a source with knowledge of the NCAA's investigation of Tennessee told me last night that there's nothing to the McDonald's bag story that Dan Patrick reported. Now, Dan Patrick is a trusted name and really a trusted source when it comes to national media. And there was things that he talked about in that little clip that we just showed you guys. That is true. Tennessee absolutely did get sloppy with recruiting. Georgia is getting sloppy with recruiting. I'll talk about that here in a second. I cut out the Jason Witten part of the end of that video because it had been too long, and Jason Witten's not going to be involved in this whatsoever. But Dan Patrick got fed some information about McDonald's bags being used to give cash to recruits, and that's just not true. Once again, a source with knowledge of the NCAA's investigation to Tennessee, nothing to the McDonald's bag money. But I will say they were absolutely paying players and recruits. That's what I also know separate of this. They just weren't funneling it through the McDonald's bags off of the McDonald's on the strip and not.
Yeah, and yesterday it was a tough day for Tennessee Vol fans, Tennessee just the university in general, right? Because they were the butt of the joke. I'm in a group text message just like most of Americans or human beings, I feel like, in today's age. And, I mean, there were memes everywhere. Rolled up dollar bills in a McDonald's fry canister to make it look like fries. Like, I mean, they went to the ends of the earth. And Vol Twitter's very good, right? Like,
yes, very creative.
So they were making fun of themselves. But here's the issue: is that they're making fun of themselves, and I think this has obviously gotten old for Tennessee fans. They're tired of making fun of themselves because of the Butch Jones champions of life, the Derek Dooley 13 guys on the field. Like, there's the Lane Kiffin 1 year and bye-bye, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, it's growing old, and this is just another story that goes towards Tennessee. But and I will back Austin. Austin's sources with Tennessee are legit, and I believe them. So I would rather trust Austin's sources because we're closer to the situation than Dan Patrick's national sources. Now, if this was another news story, we talk about this all the time. National analysts don't know and don't cover teams day in and day out. They just don't know. We talk about the Titans a lot. You get Kyle Brandt, you get Stephen A. Smith, you get Max Kellerman, all these other. They don't know about the Tennessee Titans. It's ridiculous.
Bomani Jones.
Nor do they know about the Tennessee Volunteers because the Vols aren't in the news that often because they're not that good. And when they are in the news, it's bad. But but at the end of the day, Austin, here's the problem. Your source may be correct, and we want to get it right, and we want to debunk things that aren't true. And if Dan Patrick says something about McDonald's that's not true, we do need to reiterate that to the fan base that may be false or is false. But the damage has been done, and that's the hard part.
And that's what sucks is because, look, I'm a Tennessee Vol graduate. I spent 4 years in Knoxville as a student, and I saw it all through the firing of Fulmer, Lane Kiffin's disaster, the hiring of Dooley, and Bruce Pearl's barbecue. I was there for all of that time period, and it was absolutely chaos the entire 4 years. And look, somebody said here that Brandon says Peyton endorsed Pruitt. Peyton Manning will endorse every coach that gets hired by the University of Tennessee because it's a good way for Peyton Manning to look like he's on board with the program and everybody's moving forward in the same direction. Peyton Manning will never not endorse a sitting head coach of the university. So, but again, like the knowledge that Dan Patrick or the report that Dan Patrick threw out there, once again, if you're just joining, there is nothing to the McDonald's bag money for Tennessee. They were paying recruits and players, but they were not doing it through McDonald's bags.
Based on the NCAA investigation.
Based on a source with knowledge of the NCAA's investigation to Tennessee. There's nothing about McDonald's. There's a lot of other things. And I'll quickly say this, of Dan Patrick brought up like Tennessee got sloppy in their recruiting practices, and they absolutely did. And this is not just a thing that started around Thanksgiving of this past year in 2020. That I also know from the source that the NCAA had been aware of bad and poor recruiting practices, illegal recruiting practices for Jeremy Pruitt and his program for well over a year. And how that started was by Tennessee getting sloppy and giving away free gear to recruits. And now that might not sound like a big deal, giving away free gear to recruits, but in the industry of big time college football and recruiting, if you're blatantly giving away free gear to recruits and it's obvious, that is a big sign that there's a lot more under that surface, right? And so the NCAA has had knowledge about Tennessee being sloppy with recruiting practices, giving away free gear, and has been monitoring Jeremy Pruitt's recruiting practices. And Jeremy Pruitt coming from Alabama, there's a lot of things that he hired Brian Niedermeyer, who is a dirty recruiting guy, obviously, who has been fired because of this as well. So the NCAA was not just like brand new on the scene around Thanksgiving of this year once Tennessee started the self-investigation. The NCAA knew there was stuff going on with Tennessee, but again, not through McDonald's bags, but they absolutely got sloppy with what they were doing. They were not doing a good job of, maneuvering around the recruiting rules like most universities do in the SEC.
Well, and as we said, the damage is done. The problem that I see, Austin, is and in an investigation, how do you get from point A to point B? How do you get the money from where it originates? Usually the boosters, right? They have the money. So how do you get from that money, the thousands of dollars, to said player, right? There has to be a transfer. There has to be a messenger. There has to be, whether it's a bagman or a McDonald's bagman. Like, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that they got caught through the transfer of A to B, and that's why they're in that situation. And it was traced so easily that Jeremy Pruitt was fired after 3 seasons.
For cause.
Like 3 years? Like, that's a very short amount of time. Like, and to be at this point, I think that is – and here's what we talked about yesterday, Austin. The problem is that after 3 years, this past year, they only won 3 games. Mm-hmm. And that is unacceptable for Tennessee. They have too much money. They have too big of a fan base. They have too big of a stadium. And they have too much money surrounding their entire football program to only win 3 games. It's unacceptable. So when you do some things unacceptable, you hear stories start to leak out like the Mickey D's bag, and you hear all of these, the Jason Witten rumor. Then things start to fly, and it's all to make sure that there's a reset. Now, look, glass half full, glass half empty. You don't have to deal with Jeremy Pruitt anymore. That's a positive. You get a chance to reset. The issue is, and this is glass half empty, this is going to be a hard reset because of all of the violations and the punishment still to come down for the next guy.
Right. And so you talk about how you asked the question, like, what was the transfer of money and what was the big thing? And I've talked about this for a few weeks now whenever we've had these discussions. Brian Niedermeyer was the guy, right? And Jeremy Pruitt knew what Brian Niedermeyer was doing. And once the university compliance got Brian Niedermeyer's recruiting phone, it was game over because Brian Niedermeyer had text messages and he wasn't like saving the numbers as contacts. So there were just like 10-digit numbers in the recruiting phone that they were able to then trace to who is he texting in said group. And that's how they were organizing the flow of cash through Brian Niedermeyer's recruiting phone.
Read receipts and read receipts. I will talk about those receipts later on in the show. That's going to be brought back up here on the show. You don't want to miss. Oh. But this is kind of how I feel is Swinford Adam on Periscope brings up a very good point of kind of how I think it feels is Tennessee burned their own program to guarantee a reset. Do you feel that way?
Yes. I think early on they were like, we know there's things you can fire Pruitt with cause for, so let's see if we can find it, right? Because there were people that did not want Jeremy Pruitt to return for year 4, and I'm being one of them, but I wasn't part of any of this. So they were looking into how they could fire Pruitt for cause and save themselves $12.6 million of a buyout, and once they started digging, it was like, uh-oh. Now we're in deep crap because now we went too far and there's no coming back from we can't just be like, oh, no, we didn't see that. We can't, like, once you uncovered that rug and there was all those cockroaches and everything you swept under the rug for the last couple of years, you were too far gone to turn around and say, never mind. It was already, the damage had been done by that point.
All right, so let's get to our question. To quickly reset, Austin came with a source that essentially debunked the actual truth about the McDonald's bags as a source close to the investigation with Tennessee. So that is valued. Now you know the truth. I honestly, Austin, here's the problem. The damage done. It doesn't matter, right?
Because now there is a
like, we don't care. We're still going to make the jokes.
We're still going to make the memes. You still should use Crystal, as Rob says, because nobody would look into Crystal's bag like they would a McDonald's bag. People are saying, why wasn't it Chick-fil-A? Well, Chick-fil-A doesn't have a location on the strip. McDonald's does.
Well, and you can't transfer money on Sunday, so that's one less day.
Right. Wendy's is now gone. They're off the strip. It's now a condo complex. Taco Bell's too far away. So, yes, McDonald's was the right thing to do here. But the jokes have been made, and now it's a PR nightmare and disaster. So here's the question we want to ask you guys is who is most to blame for the Vols PR disaster right now? And I think this is a hell of a question. And we've got more video for this. But who is most to blame for the Vols PR disaster right now? But first, I'm going to tell you guys about the Bone and Joint Institute, boneandjointtn.org, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine. And that's where you should go. Whenever that injury happens to either you or someone you love, make sure you get the best care possible. You can do everything. You get the injury checked out. You get the test done, the doctor visit. You get the surgery done right there and the rehab all in Franklin, Tennessee at that beautiful facility there, boneandjointtn.org. They also have a brand new location in Nolensville for rehab and sport ortho at boneandjointtn.org.
This is what we're talking about. The dumpster fire that is Tennessee, but we are asking you the question of who set flame to this? Who set flame to this dumpster fire? We've got a lot of good answers. So
I think there was plenty of roles, right? Like somebody put the wood in the dumpster. Then a different person came through and sprinkled some gasoline over the dumpster. And then a separate person was smoking a cigarette on a break and tossed said cigarette in the dumpster with the gasoline and the wood that led to this, right? So there's a lot of people involved in this, But who's most to blame? Because that's what we want to get into.
And somewhere there's some McDonald's grease involved in that story, but we won't go there.
Yeah, there's a grease fire that somebody tried to put out with water and it didn't work.
So the question is, who's most to blame for the Vols PR disaster right now? Let's go to the comment section. Chief Franco says the Vols. So does Puka, the Vols themselves. Fulmer from Chris Lopez. I blame Saban for setting the bar so high from Josh. That's hilarious. Yeah. That is a hilarious comment. We've got Fulmer coming in from Zach Goodman, 100% Pruitt from Joey. Vols Nation and social media holding a responsible there from TJ Johnson. That's interesting.
I don't agree with that, but
you don't agree?
I don't agree that the fan base is most to blame for what's happening right now.
They're not helping.
They're not. I didn't say they're helping. They're just not most to blame. They might have started stacking the wood in the dumpster.
I don't know. I think you could have a take on that. So I don't totally disagree with TJ Johnson. As far as most, we got to narrow that down.
Right.
One Wall Builder says Pruitt's staff. Phil from Kyle Adams. All of them from Tennessee Swinger. James says university's vagueness on the situation. Beverly Davenport, the former chancellor from William Thompson. The interwebs from Louis. Vols Twitter from Brandon. Phillip Fulmer from Frank says he hired a coach he could micromanage versus the best coach available. Vol Twitter coming in. Mike Hamilton, a throwback name right there. John Curry from Commodore Fan 121, which we know who he roots for, which I bet you he's really enjoying the show.
Oh, he already said that 2021 is the best year ever.
We've got Ronald McDonald. I agree with James. The fans. What do you think, Austin?
I want you to go first because you have one person that you want to point out, and we've got extra video for that. So I want you to go first on who's most to blame here.
Well, mine is easy because I mentioned it yesterday. You got to go to the top. Who hired Jeremy Pruitt? And here's the issue: Phillip Fulmer thinks that. I mean, he is the number one VFLer, right? Vol for life. Been a part of this university forever. But he's not real self-aware, right? Like, he's not university aware. So let's just roll this tape in his retirement. This is not how he thought his retirement was going to go. Let's just say that. But in his retirement press conference, just listen to what he said after the Tennessee Volunteers had just fired the coach that he had hired for recruiting violations.
When you look back at the last 3 years, how do you think Jeremy Pruitt's tenure is going to be remembered here?
Coach, do you want to start with that one?
Yes. We found the program, in quite a mess at the time. I think we definitely have upgraded the program in general, relationships on campus, relationships period. Certainly the recruiting has been good. There's some really outstanding young men in the program, not that there wasn't before. Definitely, there's just lots of good things that have happened.
Phil, the results are in, and those are all lies. It's wrong.
Like, well, they're not all lies. They did find the program in a mess. That's true.
Oh, okay.
That's true. The program wasn't a mess.
But one could debate. One could argue that it is in a worse mess than that mess that Phil said he cleaned up.
Well, he was cleaning it up, and then he spilled the mop water everywhere.
That makes more of a mess. That mop water, have you ever spilled mop water?
Yes, I have.
It reeks. It takes more time to get the smell out of that dirty mop water than it does to just clean up spilled milk.
Yeah, you should just let the milk sit there on the floor and just don't touch it and just let it stay instead of dumping the mop water everywhere.
So after we listened to that, let's just call it what it is. It was bullshit. Like, that's all that was.
No,
don't speak. Okay, here's my issue. Phil, understand, just don't talk. Like, you messed up. You messed up big time. So my answer to the question of who is most to blame is Phillip Fulmer. Why? Phillip Fulmer didn't want John Curry in the first place to become athletic director. Right. He wanted the job. And John Curry messed up enough that Phillip Fulmer snaked his way, because of his Vol ties, into the boosters' ears, into the chancellor's ears, and he wanted to come save the day. So to clean up that mess, Phillip Fulmer, after coach said no to John Curry and he got fired, he decided on Jeremy Pruitt. For 2 years, Jeremy Pruitt was building something. He lost to Georgia State, which was a complete and utter embarrassment to the Tennessee football program in the history of the university. Then they reel off 8 straight wins, and you think things are better, but they got a quarterback issue. They got a stubborn head coach who fires defensive line coaches and wants to take over and do everything. The recruiting is going okay. It's not going great. If you're paying players, it should be going great, right? And then all of a sudden, you win 3 games in a COVID year. NCAA investigates after your self-investigation, and you fire the coach that you have hired, and you are forced to retire. Phillip Fulmer was not going to retire if any of all this stuff didn't happen. So there's one man to blame. It's Phillip Fulmer. He is the eyesore of Tennessee over the last 5+ years. And you could even go further than that. I'm not a Tennessee fan, so I can't overstep in the sense of not knowing Phillip Fulmer through and through. But I've seen over the last 5 years Phillip Fulmer completely destroy his own university.
Well, it started – the Phillip Fulmer resurgence started once Dave Hart announced that he was going to retire in the summer or / fall of 2016. And they hired John Curry as the AD in early April of 2017. And so that time is when Phil Fulmer started positioning himself to become the athletic director. And then he didn't get it. Instead, John Curry got it. And John Curry was a part of Phil Fulmer losing his job as head coach after the 2008 season. And Phillip Fulmer did not want John Curry in there, who's a Haslam guy. And so Phillip Fulmer and John Curry were constantly butting heads, even though they were trying to smooth it over. And now Phillip Fulmer was able to win that. John Curry did plenty of bad things too, that he hired Tony Vitello, a good baseball coach. But again, nobody cares about baseball if football is in a bad spot. Nobody cares about baseball if football is in a great spot at Tennessee for the most part. But John Curry did plenty of things that should have gotten him fired as AD. Bev Davenport is absolutely in this mess of what she did, because they should have gone with somebody else like David Blackburn instead of John Curry in the first place. And I think the program would be in a lot healthier spot if they would have done that instead of John Curry. But hindsight's 2020, and David Blackburn's in a spot where he's not hireable by Tennessee anymore right now. Nate John brings up how great of a question that was to Fulmer by Blake Topmeyer, asking him, putting him on the spot about Jeremy Pruitt's legacy, where you absolutely cannot. And I counted it out when I was editing that video. The recruiting has been 1, 2, 3. The recruiting has been good. A 3-second pause for Phillip Fulmer to try to figure out, how do I end this sentence that I already started in the wrong way? Because it was complete and utter disregard for self-awareness in that moment. And Phillip Fulmer is absolutely part of the big PR disaster right now.
Well, yeah, let's say you get, and I wouldn't even give him an A or a B. So let's say you passed the test, right? You got a C on the test, but you cheated. And your teacher said, what is the best thing about this? And you say, well, that I passed. Well, you cheated to pass.
And you didn't even pass very well.
Yeah, that's why I say, I mean, they actually failed. So I would, if you look at what Tennessee over the last 3 years, they have failed the university standards. And really, and let's go back quickly before I get your answer, Austin, because I am curious what you have to say about who's most to blame. I do think that the expectations of the Tennessee fan base, which, look, rightfully so, Tennessee and I compare Tennessee and Michigan, very, very similar, right? Massive fan base, massive stadium, tons of money, tons of successful alums all over the country that want to see their university's football team thrive, because when you make a lot of money, you like nice things, right? I mean, that's how it is.
Absolutely.
You like nice things. You like your days to be better. On Saturday, you value watching the Vols, having them win, and riding off into the sunset with a nice cocktail, right? But you can't do that if you win 3 games in a COVID year, right? So, like the expectations and the pressure, keyword, pressure of the Tennessee fan base on said coach or administration or athletic department does play a massive part in their failures over the last decade plus.
No doubt. So who is most to blame in this? It's hard for me to come up with an answer that's not Phillip Fulmer, because Jeremy Pruitt absolutely to blame for being sloppy in recruiting, and it's recruiting practices that are happening across the SEC and across Power 5 college football. Like similar things are going on at all the big name programs, but Tennessee was doing it so blatantly obvious that they got caught, and they fired their entire recruiting staff and 3 assistant coaches and the head coach, all for cause. Like that didn't even happen at Ole Miss. Like they fired everybody that had to deal with recruiting and these violations. So Pruitt is to blame, but Fulmer's also to blame because he is the athletic director and he hired a guy that he knew how to operate, under the table in the SEC. But he didn't do a good job of making sure he was doing it the right way. Phillip Fulmer had no idea what to do as an athletic director, and somebody said that Fulmer hired a coach he could micromanage. No, his failure was to manage the head coach that he hired. He just let Jeremy Pruitt do all these illegal things and didn't do anything to make sure it was done under the table the right way where they could get away with it. So Phillip Fulmer is the most to blame here.
And he didn't know how to do the job. I think
correct.
We referenced the Magic Johnson thing I did yesterday. He just wanted to be a figure, right? And Tennessee, that's what they give Vince Young at Texas, right? Here, we'll give you a title so you can walk around. We'll give you access to the facility. You can shake hands. You can try to, you can speak at the big, banquets that we have. But Phillip Fulmer wanted more, and he got burned because of that want.
Sure. A to Z Sports here live on this Wednesday show. Zach, you teased a couple things yesterday. You tasked both of us and our audience to do some homework and to come up with our top 3 candidates for the Vols job. Our top 3 candidates for the Vols job. And once we give our top 3 candidates, we will then give our overall prediction on what we think the Vols will actually do, which is not necessarily our opinion based, but who we think they will actually hire. I've also got a couple things to talk about and talk through about a couple athletic director candidates that we will get to in this conversation as well. But before we dive into our 3 candidates, Zach, tell everybody about the Tucker Agency.
Yeah, Tucker TN. If you're in the state of Tennessee, if you're outside the state of Tennessee, you can use Nashville's independent insurance agency. It doesn't matter where you are. That's the best part. All you have to do is email Will, W-I-L-L, at tuckertn.com. Tucker, TN for Tennessee.com. It's very, very easy, very, very simple. The average customer that emails saves 20% on their insurance. They'll bundle your homeowners and your car insurance to save you money. Or if you rent, you have rental property. They also will provide life insurance if that is something that you need for you and your family. So they have you covered. All you have to do, Will Tucker and his team will take care of you. If you email Will at tuckertn.com, say, heard about you on A to Z Sports. How do I save money on my insurance?
All right, A to Z Sports, our top 3 candidates for the Vols, but don't forget mybookie.ag. Code MyTitans for extra cash in that first deposit. MyBookie.ag, code MyTitans. I've already made 2 plays for NFL Championship weekend. We'll talk about that later in the week. MyBookie.ag, code MyTitans for extra cash. So top 3 candidates for the Vols to hire as head coach. Zach, do you want to go first here? Because I'm very curious about your list, because your list and my list, like obviously you always say that I look through these big orange glasses, and I'm guessing you think my list will have bigger names on it than your list. But
Well,
I'm
as long
curious,
as your list doesn't have Lane Kiffin, I'll be okay with it.
It
Because
does
if
not
it
have
does,
Lane.
I will end the show.
it does
I
not have
will
Lane.
leave, and you will do the rest of the show by yourself. I will not be any a part. If any of these three on your list has the words Lane or Kiffin, I am out.
So I will let you know my top three candidates are not Lane Kiffin oriented. Now, my prediction, on the other hand, I can't promise anything.
Okay. Well, again, you want to end the show, you can. That's fine. But I'm just telling you what it is. I'll go first. All right. I'll step up. In my opinion, and again, this is very difficult, Austin, as we talk about, because what is the real perception of a coach to Tennessee? It's not about the fan base. It's not about Dan Patrick or us or boosters. It's about a coach. Does he want the job? Is it a good job? Is it a high-paying job? Is it have too many headaches? I don't know. How desperate is said coach? But in my opinion, I think these are the three coaches. If I was the athletic director of the Tennessee Volunteers, this is who I would go after in this order.
Okay.
Number one, I think a safe, and you have to have you can't have risk. You're not getting Hugh Freeze. You're under NCAA violations, right? So Hugh Freeze is not on my list because I'm going to be realistic on this, okay? And so my number one, I think Gus Malzahn makes the most sense because of a couple of things. He's familiar with the SEC. He's desperate because he just got fired. He wants to prove to the world that he can get back to a national championship, in which he did with Nick Marshall, a cornerback converted into quarterback in that unbelievable year. He got backdoored by Jameis Winston and Kelvin Benjamin, both with suspect pro careers, let's just say. But Gus Malzahn makes the most sense if he wants the job, right? And I don't know if he does, but that would be a smooth transition because it also does one thing, Austin. Gus Malzahn is a recognizable face and name to a fan base that needs a recognizable face and name. He has head coaching experience. He hasn't gotten in a lot of trouble at Auburn in his time. He's an offensive mind. That's what Garantano is not. Like Garantano, that whole career set Tennessee back. And the stubbornness of Jeremy Pruitt not to play Harrison Bailey earlier when he wouldn't do it is one of the many reasons why he's fired. Gus Malzahn's number one. Number two is Tom Herman. I don't know if he would be willing to do it, to go from a headache of Texas to Tennessee, but offensive mind, he checks all of the boxes that Gus Malzahn does playing big-time college football. He doesn't have SEC experience, but he has big-time college football experience. Tom Herman, I think, would be well received. Okay? Those are my top two. Number three is more of a reach because of maybe his background and not playing top-tier football. I don't know if you can get Gus Malzahn and Tom Herman. I think if you went to Jamie Chadwell and said, look, we want to give you the job, are you willing to take it? I think he would say yes. Coastal Carolina was on the radar this year, and they were damn good. And Austin, you watched a lot of their games. You bet a big time on the Chanticleers all season. Made you a very, very wealthy man. Probably can buy a brand new house of all the money you won on the Chanticleers. My third coach is Jamie Chadwell. I don't know if they'll get any of those three, but that's my top three coaching candidates.
So it's very interesting, Zach, because my top three are the exact same.
You're a smart man.
In that exact order.
Look, guys, we don't talk about anything.
Nothing. Yeah. And so I put out a tweet 30 minutes or less after Jeremy Pruitt was fired, right, on Monday, saying that Tennessee should go after one and must have one of these three coaches. And I put 1, Hugh Freeze, 2, Gus Malzahn, 3, Tom Herman. That was my list. Now, I definitely understand now that Hugh Freeze is absolutely not an option. Like there is no way in hell that is an option. It's not going to happen. So then you just slide up my list. And Hugh asks, what about Matt Campbell from Iowa State? Matt Campbell has turned down so many jobs. He's not leaving Ohio State unless it's a real big boy after a coach retires and leaves it in a good spot. Matt Campbell is not going to come clean up Tennessee and leave Iowa State for what he's been able to do, or he's got his eyes in the NFL. I'm not sure. But Matt Campbell's not it. So Gus Malzahn, I think, makes a lot of sense. I told you guys earlier that Gus Malzahn was content on playing golf for a year. He's already been doing that with his wife in tropical areas. I've seen that because he got $10 million in the first 30 days of being fired by Auburn. But then once Tom Herman got fired from Texas, Gus Malzahn started to get a little antsy. And so he started working his way and trying to back channel his name through some Tennessee things. The NCAA violations and what's going to happen with the sanctions are the biggest thing. Does Gus Malzahn want to deal with that? Or is he okay dealing with that? Because he's going to have $21 million from Auburn and is not and goes in there with no pressure to succeed early.
Yeah. And there you go. You get a little bit more time with the fan base because of the restructure from the top down, right? Brand new athletic director. Now, here's the issue with those three head coaches possibly. And this is where it comes down to. We'll get to what we actually think happens. Because am I surprised that I am surprised that we are aligned in like the three in order of the three. But I'm not that far-fetched because as Kyle says, this is a great comment. Those are three logical choices, which means none of them will get an interview. I don't know if none of them will get an interview. I don't know or think, and this is my personal opinion, Austin, I don't think any of those three coaches will go to Tennessee. And I think that is more of, it's not me, it's you. It's more about Tennessee than the coaches.
I think that could be the case for both Malzahn and Tom Herman. Like Tom Herman could easily just chill and wait on the sidelines with his Texas buyout money and say, look, Justin Fuente might get fired from Va Tech next year. I could just go take that job that doesn't have NCAA stuff going on. So Tom Herman could absolutely sit it out and wait. I think Tom Herman would be a good fit, offensive guy. You could keep Kevin. The hard thing here is Kevin Steele. Because Kevin Steele puts you in a weird spot. And I'll talk about that here a little later, because it's like you're going to keep Kevin Steele, who you just hired to a 2-year contract right before you fired Pruitt. Are you going to keep Kevin Steele and force Tom Herman or another offensive-minded coach to keep Kevin Steele as the D coordinator? Like, are you going to force that on somebody? Because you ask everybody, like the main part, like Jamie Chadwell was talking to Vanderbilt, and from what I heard, Jamie Chadwell's holdup with Vandy was, I want to bring my whole staff. And Vandy was like, no, we don't want you to do that. And so there will be a holdup with that. So I don't know what that means for Tom Herman, but I do think Tom Herman would be a good fit. I think the Rick Barnes connection there with Texas and their past is a comfort level thing for Tom Herman to be able to have somebody to go to who's been there, done that, to walk the same things that Tom Herman walked at Texas. I think that's something that will make Tom Herman more comfortable. But Kevin Steele throws a wrench in all this. Jamie Chadwell is interesting because if offered the job, Jamie Chadwell accepts it immediately. But can Tennessee offer Jamie Chadwell a job when Jamie Chadwell has his own NCAA history from Charleston Southern? So if you don't know what happened at Charleston Southern, kind of a similar thing that happened at Florida, where players were using their university stipends at the bookstore, not buying books, but using that money to buy electronics and other things. And so that happened at Charleston Southern for under Jamie Chadwell, and there were 18 wins vacated there. Jamie Chadwell stepped down, then reemerged at Coastal Carolina. I don't look at that and like those type of things that happen. I'm like, the head coach isn't telling anybody to do that. The head coach or the assistant coaches aren't saying, hey, kids, go buy these new electronic things at the bookstore with your money. Like those aren't that feels like dumb college kids making mistakes that they didn't really understand that they were doing.
And he's had time to amend that, right?
Well, and Hugh Freeze has had time to amend those things, but there's so many bigger things to Hugh Freeze.
Yeah. Like getting the number one player in the country, right? Like getting Laquan Treadwell and Laramie Tunzel, like that. It's just on a much bigger scale. So that's why Jamie Chadwell's on my list at 3, because I think he's amended that and he has done a good job at Coastal Carolina. And I think he actually, I could see or vision him having success at Tennessee. I do have to ask you one question, Austin, before we move on to what we actually think will happen.
Yeah.
What is the relationship between Kevin Steele and Gus Malzahn?
I don't know, because they operated and had success at Auburn as head coach DC relationship for years. And I feel like Auburn's defense was really good. Their offense, as we know, with Gus Malzahn, was either hot or cold, depending on quarterback play and weird play calling at time. But if a lot of people are saying that Kevin Steele was behind Gus Malzahn getting fired, but I don't know if that was Kevin Steele trying to pull strings. What I do know is that specific boosters at Auburn operate kind of like Jerry Jones with the Cowboys, that they will do and pull their money, right? So they liked Kevin Steele, and Kevin Steele had good booster relationships, but that doesn't necessarily mean automatically that Kevin Steele was working behind the scenes to get Gus Malzahn fired so he could be the coach, because he obviously wasn't named the full head coach. They went with Brian Harsin. So I think it's more boosters than it was Kevin Steele.
All right, so let's get to this.
But Zach Reagan says this, and I trust what Zach Reagan, our writer at A-to-Z-SportsNashville.com, says, I think Gus views it as Steele helped push him out.
And that does make sense. That makes logical sense of how Gus could, if he does, feel like that. And so that throws a wrench in this, and I think that impacts possibly what my prediction is. But what's your Vols coaching hire prediction as of right now? And this is not just to you, Austin. This is to everybody. In the comment section on Facebook, on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, comment on Periscope. Comment what you think the Tennessee Volunteers will actually do over the course of the next several months, right? Like, they're going to have a little bit of time, but in your opinion, like Austin and I just gave, which are the exact same thing, our top 3 coaching candidates that we would go after, but we are not the university, right? So what do you think Tennessee will do?
Right. Real quick, let me tell you guys about Mandu, the Pulse of Fitness. It's one 15-minute workout equals 5+ hours in the weight room. So I don't know about you guys. I don't have time to go to the gym and get a lift in that lasts an hour, hour and a half, let alone multiple times a week. I don't have time for that. But I do have time to do Mandu, 15-minute workout. I'm actually planning on doing that later today, squeezing it in between some meetings before and after. Mandu.com, 15 minutes of full-body electronic muscle stimulation. The science is real. The results are real. My body is completely transformed from what Mandu has taught me about everything that goes into your fitness plan to achieve your fitness goals. It's the perfect time to jump on the Mandu train. With the new year, Mandu.com, your first workout's free.
A-to-Z Sports, we're talking about, you know what we need to do?
What's that?
This is a throwback. Before we get to what Tennessee we think they're going to do, Austin, we had a show earlier this season. How many are left?
I'm sorry?
How many are left?
1. That's right. Good call. 1 is left. And the one that's left was the guy that was the hottest seat on in your opinion.
At the time, yeah, because of the rape accusations that stemmed from Darius Geis and some other players, right? So we kind of called this is why you should watch A-to-Z Sports, is back during the season, we had a full show on our prediction because we had our coach's hot seat. And those 4 coaches were on the hot seat. And what do you know? Pruitt, gone. Mason, gone. Malzahn, gone. Orgeron, still there, but he just won a national championship. So not as surprising.
Well,
I bet my bet on the investigation accusation of the assault stuff and the sexual cases.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, 3 of them were fired.
Yes, and I will say this, and I'm going to toot my own horn. I didn't think Ed Orgeron belonged in that graphic. So if it was up to me, we would have gone 3 for 3, 100%.
Yeah, so let's get to this question. What is your Vols coaching hire prediction as of right now? There is a theme, and Billy Napier is a hot topic in the chat. Matthew says Napier, Bill Clark from Drew Sugg, Billy Napier, Jeff Rubin says Kevin Wilson. Billy Napier is my prediction.
Well, let's talk about Kevin Wilson, because Big Ten Jeff has been all over Kevin Wilson and saying how great of a hire Kevin Wilson would be from Indiana. While I agree that would be a big hire for Tennessee to do that, why would Kevin Wilson do that?
There's no reason.
There's no reason why Kevin Wilson should leave Indiana that he has in a fantastic spot. Kevin Wilson right now is on the path to having a statue outside wherever Indiana plays football, because nobody knows where Indiana plays football, because Indiana doesn't care about football, but Kevin Wilson has made them start to. And so the expectations at Indiana, he's already succeeding them. And so there's, as Rob puts, there's no pressure on Kevin Wilson at Indiana.
Yeah. Steven says Kevin Steele, Chadwell from Frank, Kevin Steele for a season from Rob, Steele from Derek. It'll be Gus or Tom from B Hall. Making another bad decision from Nathan, which that's not a bad choice. We've got Bill O'Brien. Well, Bill O'Brien is
timeout. 30-second timeout. Shade on me, shade on ourselves. I got Kevin Wilson and Tom Allen confused. Tom Allen's the head coach at Indiana. Kevin Wilson is an assistant at Ohio State. So dumb on me, throwing shade on me. My bad. Big Ten Jeff, you're back in play here with this Kevin Wilson thing. That's the end of my 30-second shade timeout.
Oh, man, Jeff. Big Ten Jeff, take a victory lap.
Go for it. That victory lap's all on you, Jeff. I'm not afraid to admit when I sound like an idiot.
You know what you need to do? So here's your victory lap, Big Ten Jeff, on Austin. Put in the comment section shade emojis, right? So for his orange sunglasses, put those shade emojis in the comment. We'll feature you on the broadcast, because that is a big – you would talk about statues too. So – hey, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Hey, I've made plenty of them. Big Jeff has made plenty of them, right? But there you go. Jesse says Jason Witten. I want to speak on that real quick. And there's Big Ten Jeff. He's going shades right there. But Jason Witten, that would be the dumbest thing, right? Like, he has no head coaching experience.
No coaching experience.
Yeah, right. Like that.
He's never been a coach.
Like, that kind of discredited Dan Patrick's source from me, right? Like, when I heard that, no. So here's what I think will happen, Austin.
Okay, I'm ready.
And I would, if I had odds, I would bet this, and there are odds, I guess. I think what Tennessee is going to do is justify. Okay? And so they are going to justify. Kevin Steele was the rumors were swirling that he could replace Gus Malzahn, right? We just talked about that.
Yes.
Well, he didn't. So he then took a job at Tennessee in a failing situation. Let's look at the timeline, Austin. It kind of tells you what I think is going to happen. Why in the hell would they hire Kevin Steele at the time that they did, knowing that they could fire Jeremy Pruitt in the next couple of weeks?
Well, and you could say, I'm with you. I think, from what it sounds like, if you look at the 2 hires that were made over the last 2 weeks, one was Kevin Steele, who has a long-time relationship with both Pruitt and Fulmer. And then the other hire timeout. The other hire they made was an assistant strength coach who is the son of a former Fulmer player at Tennessee. So you can draw and connect dots and lines and say that it sounds like Fulmer made a couple decisions. But I mean, I don't know though, but I have no idea. It sounds weird, but Kevin Steele makes sense on the Tennessee staff whether Jeremy Pruitt's the head coach or whoever else is the head coach, because that's how valued Kevin Steele has been as a recruiter and as a defensive coach. Whether he's a linebackers coach or DB's coach or D coordinator, Kevin Steele is very valuable.
And where did he play college football?
Tennessee.
So, but I'm glad you brought that up. Like, right, that's good information of maybe connecting the dots of why. I just think that Tennessee is going to prioritize the athletic director over the head coach, and Kevin Steele will get his opportunity this season. This smells like Matt Luke. It just does. Kevin Steele, Tennessee guy. The boosters are not going to get their panties in a wad because they got some no-name guy that doesn't care about the university as their interim head coach. That's not the case. It's not Brady Hoke being the interim head coach. It's a VFLer. And so I think Kevin Steele is the head coach for the 2021 season. And this, over the next several weeks to months, the boosters and the higher-ups, the decision-makers of Tennessee, go after an athletic director that is competent and that they interview, that they vet, and they decide you are the guy that will make the decision after this season on who our next head coach is. If Kevin Steele wins an SEC East title, he'll retain his title. He'll become the head coach.
I highly doubt that happens.
I don't think that will happen. I agree.
So
But that's what I think is going to go down.
Let me take this a step further, because your prediction, Zach, is you think that Kevin Steele is the coach for 2021.
I do.
All right, so I think there are two big names for the athletic director job that you will hear a lot about. And so Brent asked me, Austin, who do you want as AD? So I'm going to go over two scenarios. There's two athletic directors. I think one of these athletic director scenarios likely leads to what you're saying, that Kevin Steele becomes the head coach for 2021. But first, tell everybody about Calvin and Subtle.
Yeah, Calvin and Subtle is where you need to get your hardwood floors. This is what we do on the show. You can get this unbelievable Dover hardwood floor. You see that sticky note? That tells me what type of hardwood floor this is. This wood grain can be right in your kitchen. Rip up the carpet and get some dynamic hardwood floors right here. We're going to be featuring them all 2021. We're going to be taking care of you. Right there, hardwood floors from Calvin and Subtle, 615-448-6414. That's 615-448-6414, or online at calvinandsubtle.com. 1 to 2 weeks. If you want some Dover hardwood floors, this is the specific what this actual hardwood floor is. You can call them up, say, look, I saw the Dover right there on A to Z Sports. That's what I want in my dining room. They'll hook you up. That's calvinandsubtle.com.
All right, A to Z Sports here live on this Wednesday show talking Vols. I think there are two candidates for the AD job that are likely, and one of them would lead to the retention of Kevin Steele as acting head coach for at least 1 year. I will say this. Mitch brings up David Blackburn for AD and Gus for head coach. David Blackburn will not get the athletic director job. David Blackburn is no longer in position to get that job. And Derek asks, why has Blackburn flamed out? He's heard personal life. But what about it? So David Blackburn was the AD and doing a damn good job at UTC for 2013 to 2017. And something happened there at the tail end of that. David Blackburn basically put all chips on the table. He went all in, all eggs in one basket for the Tennessee AD job after Dave Hart retired. So when he did that and then did not get the job over John Curry, David Blackburn burned some bridges at UTC, and then he stepped down the following summer as UTC athletic director, and now he's a senior associate AD at MTSU, which is fine. But he's no longer in position to be able to be hired by Tennessee as athletic director. So that's out of the table, because I thought David Blackburn should have been the guy 4 years ago instead of John Curry. But regardless, there are two names. They both have Tennessee connections, and they are both sitting athletic directors, and they're both doing really good jobs, and they have both been at multiple SEC schools, including Tennessee. The first one is John Gilbert, who is currently the athletic director at East Carolina. John Gilbert was the number 2 guy under Dave Hart at Tennessee and was also with Dave Hart at Alabama. And he's a really good fundraiser and a really good money guy, and is doing so far a good job at East Carolina. But he was at Tennessee under Dave Hart and the number 2 guy. So he was very capable of understanding what needs to happen at Tennessee. So John Gilbert has a good connection with Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes hired by Dave Hart. So Rick Barnes would probably advocate for John Gilbert as the athletic director if they went that situation. John Gilbert's son, full disclosure, a freshman basketball player at Tennessee under Rick Barnes. The other name is former Vol football player Mark Ingram, who is currently the sitting AD at UAB. UAB was in
It's come a long way.
Yes, has come a long way. And Mark Ingram was at Temple before that. As Brent brings up, he hired Matt Rule at Temple, which was a great hire because Matt Rule fast-tracked that to Baylor, to the NFL, and Matt Rule's incredible path there. So Mark Ingram spent time at Georgia. He spent time at Tennessee, where at Tennessee he raised over $330 million of capital in a short 5-year period based on a facilities project at Tennessee. He was a long snapper in the mid-90s for a couple of years at UT, and he's done a good job at UAB, rising them out of the literal ashes where they had to cancel their football program and then reinvigorate their football program and build money around that. Mark Ingram and John Gilbert, Zach, are the 2 most likely names to be the next Vols athletic director. Brent says it's Mark Ingram or bust for me. So how I feel about Mark Ingram, if he is hired as the Vols AD, that feels like Kevin Steele will be the head coach for 2021, because Mark Ingram then takes the job at his alma mater by letting the boosters decide that Kevin Steele be the head coach for 1 year before going through a full search afterwards, kind of a Matt Luke type situation in NCAA investigations. That allows Mark Ingram to have a year 0, or basically not start his own clock. And so I think Mark Ingram would be likely to keep Kevin Steele on as head coach. I think John Ingram is more likely to say, no, I'm going and hiring my guy. And so those are the 2 situations that I've been reading about.
Mark Ingram, you mean
John Gilbert? John Gilbert is likely to go hire his own guy. Mark Ingram likely to keep Kevin Steele.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of good information that and Mark Beach brings up, which I does have a point. That was pretty interesting. He says, I think trying to stay in the family is the biggest mistake all teams make, but it's just, this is how it's like networking, right? So if you meet somebody that went to Tennessee and you went to Tennessee, there's an immediate connection.
Or Ole Miss, or
right?
whatever.
Or Ole Miss.
Everywhere.
They're more likely to be your friend. Right? Like it's just, oh, you've experienced some of the same things I have. And so in bigger jobs and bigger situations, the boosters, which we all know control the funding and the revenue of the university, if they pull their checks, then things start to change. If they start writing checks, it's usually to what they want to have happen. And so if I think that they will stay in the family, Austin, and I would not be surprised if either of those. It does seem, of what I've kind of seen on the internet, and I'm not close to the situation. I don't want to claim to be, but I predict that Mark Ingram is probably most likely, and then that doubles down on my Kevin Steele as head coach in 2021. I truly believe that's going to happen. I think Kevin Steele, this is his opportunity. Right. He's been wanting to get a big time head coaching job. And, he's a name. He's not a prominent name. He's not Gus Malzahn or Tom Herman, but he is a name and he's a Tennessee guy. So here's Tennessee.
Here's the biggest pro on the Kevin Steele pro con legal pad is that Kevin Steele's best asset is his recruiting prowess and his recruiting relationships. What's currently happening with Tennessee's roster right now? They have the most players currently in the transfer portal of any university in the country. And that's probably going to continue to grow.
Woof.
And so what Kevin Steele can do, like he did with Big Cat from Auburn, and if Kevin Steele's the guy, he's likely to hire more guys from that Auburn staff that just got fired under Gus Malzahn, which just strengthens your recruiting relationships and also helps you win battles in the portal. Like Kevin Steele, the best thing about the guy is that I don't think I or we or anybody watching this truly understand how well connected Kevin Steele is over the entire Southeast in recruiting. And so that is the biggest pro for Kevin Steele being here in Tennessee and maybe as the acting head coach is that he can help you Band-Aid, duct tape, rebuild the roster because of the transfer portal. And the transfer portal, you're not getting 18-year-olds out of high school. You're getting 19, 20, 21-year-olds who have already been in strength and weight rooms for the last 2 years at other schools.
So what is Tennessee going to do? They're going to have to make a decision. Are they going to do the slow play and let the fire die down and let it simmer and let the national spotlight kind of just ease over them, brush off, and move on with their lives of the SEC and into the spring where we all know nobody talks about SEC football, which is a big-time problem? Or are they wanting to make an immediate splash hire like a Gus Malzahn or Tom Herman if they're willing and pay a lot more money? Because you could look at it. Now, Jeremy Pruitt's going to lawyer up and try to get some of that buyout back, right?
Yeah.
And because he doesn't believe it's for cause.
Well,
whatever that means. He's going to try to get some of it back.
Yeah.
So
I listened to, real quick on that, I listened to Trey Wallace yesterday, who was on J. Martin Ramon, and our buddy Trey Wallace, who's been all over this stuff for over a month now, said that if Jeremy Pruitt tries to take this thing to court, it's not going to end well for Jeremy Pruitt. Like,
right. I think there's too much evidence against that.
Yes.
So if they have the money, right? We talked about it earlier in the show. They got rid of a coach that they wanted to get rid of for no money, right? And that doesn't happen. You usually have to pay people to go away.
But was it worth it? Well, Tennessee is now paying. I heard this from Clay Travis this morning too. Tennessee has now fired 3 coaches for cause in the last 11 years. Bruce Pearl, Donnie Tyndall, which we kind of forget about because Rick Barnes has been so successful, and now Jeremy Pruitt.
Right. So that is a higher up problem.
Yeah.
I just think that the right move for the overall university, I'm not just talking about the football program, is to go the safe route.
Yeah. And
because of what you just said, because they've screwed up too many times with cheating.
Which is crazy because they've also been paying so many millions of dollars of buyout money to other coaches, but they haven't had to do it for 3 of them.
But they have a lot of money.
Right. And Bryant Cash says, and they wonder why they can't hire a good coach. Well, Bruce Pearl and Donnie Tyndall, like those guys did it to themselves. Like that's like Tennessee had no choice with Donnie Tyndall.
Was Rick Barnes hired after Donnie Tyndall?
Yes.
Right. So there's proof that you can get the right guy after a terrible coach. Because Rick Barnes, I mean, even though they lost to Florida last night, Tennessee basketball is really good. Those are cold hard facts.
Yeah, you saw the meme of the little boy swinging on the swing set, and that's Tennessee basketball being ranked top 10 with the fire behind him being Tennessee football, and he's just having fun on the swing. Yeah, that's what Tennessee basketball.
But the problem is that little boy on the swing doesn't pay the bills, and so you need to figure out that fire before you enjoy the swing.
Oh yeah. So again, my prediction. I hate to do this because I don't know if it's a cop out or if it's just educated. But if Mark Ingram's the AD, Kevin Steele's the coach. That's my prediction for 1 year at least. If John Gilbert is the AD, he goes out and hires somebody else. And
I think that the board of directors, I think the board will tell him what to do for the.
Well, I think the boosters are making the hire regardless of who the AD is. I just think John Gilbert will be pressing harder for his own guy than Mark Ingram would.
Yeah, and one final thing before we get to shade, I think we can all agree, and again, I'm not a Tennessee fan, but we can all agree that Tennessee needs to not get advice from Jimmy Haslam. Get that guy out of here. And he's got the pocketbooks, and I know that can't happen, but you need unless
he wants to bring Kevin Stefanski from the Browns to Knoxville. That's the only thing Jimmy Haslam should suggest at this point.
Yeah, well, that's not happening.
A to Z Sports here live on a Wednesday. We always ends Wednesday's throw with shade. And Zach, something happened yesterday that pissed me off. And I don't know if it was done on purpose or not, but it's my shade today. But first, let me tell all of you guys about Renters Warehouse and renterswarehouse.com. The professional landlords in the Nashville area, Renters Warehouse can help you earn long-term equity, get that mailbox money, that long-term wealth here with renterswarehouse.com. So many different ways you can use Renters Warehouse. If you're currently renting out, then you can look for more inventory, new home to rent out as well. If you want to find out how much your home can rent for, you go to renterswarehouse.com. Instead of selling the house, and that's one transaction that's going to have closing costs and a bunch of other stuff, commissions taken out of it, turn it into a money-making machine, a cash register that keeps going and ringing every month at renterswarehouse.com.
A to Z Sports, we've talked a lot about Tennessee, and we've had a great show, a big show, and more people will listen to this show after we are done in the morning on iTunes, Spotify, on SoundCloud, or go rewatch us, and we appreciate that. I think we've given out a lot of good information, and this is real good information. This is opinion from all sides, you, myself, and everybody in the chat. I don't know if we fixed any problems, but I definitely think that these are some logical conversations that we've had about the Tennessee football program and the university overall.
Yep. So throwing shade time. Who wants to go first, Zach? Do you want to go first or me go first?
Well, let's read some comments because they are starting to roll in. My shade is as old as time. Okay, it is.
Beauty and the Beast.
Well, it is something that has been brought up numerous times throughout the course of this company's history of what to do and what not to do. So let's read some shade first. So Big Ten Jeff says, throwing shade to everyone who doesn't, we got to speak good English right here, Jeff, who doesn't measure doorways and openings before buying large appliances that won't fit before taking them apart. So annoying. That's actually pretty funny, right?
It is funny, yes.
So that's pretty good. Rob says shade on Fulmer for taking zero responsibility in this mess. I respect him no more. Nate John says throwing shade at 5% of Titans fans are in the Titans fan pages wanting to trade Ryan Tannehill and multiple first-round picks for Deshaun Watson. I mean, I'll endorse that. That is almost as asinine as Tennessee.
You got to finish the rest
they're going to get for Lane Kiffin. He says, I mean, come on, click your heels 3 times and come back to Kansas, you bunch of Dorothies. You wanted that in there.
Great.
Throwing shade on me. Oh, Louie. Ooh, I like this because – and Austin, you and I, we kept our trap closed. Earlier in the week, Louis was on some sort of something.
He's on that A.J. Brown. I don't know.
Louis says, throwing shade on me. Sorry, A to Z and A to Z-ites. Monday, I was a fool. Thank you for putting it out. Louis was so ridiculous in the comments that we had to mute Louis. He was like, and we didn't say anything. Austin did it. And I was like, I endorse that because he was being such a fool. But Louis has come full circle because it being Wednesday, a couple of days to sleep on it, he has admitted his wrongs.
For the record, Louis Chesney more self-aware than Phillip Fulmer.
There you go. Bobby says, my shade's on Adam Silver. He's been saying for weeks that the NBA won't jump in line for vaccines, but now he's saying maybe they should get vaccine early as an example. I would love to dive deeper into that conversation because there is politics written all over that.
I have no idea. I have not followed that one bit, and so I have no idea about that. So maybe we'll have to save that for another time so I can at least know what the hell.
I'll tell you the quick story.
Yeah.
So Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, came out early on when the vaccine came out and said, look, we're not going to jump line. A lot of the leagues said that.
Right.
Which, look, I personally don't care. I'm a sports fan. It helps our business. I would want them to jump line and all get vaccinated if they do choose to, so that we can have sports.
But we all understand that there are things that are way more important than sports, and those things need to be taken care of first.
100%, especially because of the maybe long drawn out rollout of the vaccine that has not gone. I mean, if you roll out millions upon millions upon millions of vaccines, probably not going to go smooth. It's just death by numbers. And so Adam Silver then came back this week and said, and I understand the position that he is in, but the NBA said they could take the stance of expediting the process and having essentially their African-American players endorse taking the vaccine to influence the majority of African-Americans to take the vaccine to educate, right?
And I think that's important because athletes have a platform, and I think people a lot of times put athletes on too high of a pedestal. But if you use your platform for something good, then great, right? Just don't use your platform for stupid things like Isaiah Wilson.
Yeah, Zach Goodman says, also throwing shade on T. Martin for messing up his career and not taking the South Alabama job.
I don't think that matters.
Who knows? That's not something I care about, but I don't know. Maybe that is. So I'll get to my shade. It's pretty quick and easy because it is something that all men should adhere to. Don't send dick pics. Don't do it. Okay? When you think about it, on your girl or your side chick or your wife, fiance, doesn't matter. Don't send them. Don't send dick pics. It's a bad idea. Don't snap them either. You think that she has the ability to take screenshots? Oh, yeah, she does. She can screenshot that, and that's connected to you because all you have to do is ask the former Mets GM, Jared Porter, and what he did to a media member years ago, an international media member that was, again, very innocent in what the findings of what he was trying to do and build a relationship with somebody of a higher up, and he was trying to get it in, let's just say. Don't send dick pics. Don't do it. We don't need to see that. She doesn't need to see that, and your phone doesn't need to see that.
And it's just inappropriate, and it's unfortunate because of this with Porter, the guy sent 60 unanswered text messages to a reporter. I don't understand how there are people in the world like that are so disgusting when it comes to them being a human being. And I saw several female reporters talk about the complicated aspect of them trying to do their jobs. Jessica Mendoza was talking about this on Outside the Lines yesterday, that with COVID and not being around the clubhouse, it's harder to just have casual conversations with players, with whoever, about baseball tactics, their swing, things that are happening, what's going on with the game, so she can do her job better. So now she has to ask for phone numbers for conversation so she can do her jobs. And now men who are gross cavemen in areas are using that or thinking about that as an invite to make a sexual advance. I don't get how there are still men out there who do this all the time. It's just disgusting.
They don't think. They don't think about the repercussions, right? It's what you're thinking with, right? It's the old Seinfeld episode. What are you thinking with? Are you thinking with your guy downstairs or your guy up top, right? You got to think about that.
It just doesn't make any sense.
And it costs. Being the New York Mets general manager is a massive opportunity. that now will never happen again because you decided to be stupid and think about your little guy down there instead of your guy up top. Don't do it. So, A to Z Sports PSA. Tennessee fans, you ain't getting Lane Kiffin, and don't send pictures of your junk to anybody. Female, male, doesn't matter. Don't send them.
Fair shade. My shade, damn it, Zach. I don't know if you did this on purpose, but yesterday you were dropping off a hard drive that you bought for both of us to my house. And Zach, I appreciate you dropping off the hard drive, but now I group you into every Uber Eats, Postmates, DoorDash, FedEx person, Amazon delivery person who knocks on the damn door. Do not knock on doors because it just makes my dogs go berserk. And I don't know what you made a big.
I have an explanation for this.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Because what you did, I was in my office and I heard this big bang on the door. Both sleeping dogs immediately jump up, start yapping, barking their heads off for the next 5 minutes. And I jumped up quick enough to see you walking by the window. And I just go, damn it, Zach. What kind of noise were you making there? What happened? Like you dropped.
I knocked once on the door.
Don't do that.
Why?
Because you just text me and say, hey, just dropped it off.
Well, so here's my thinking of it. Here was my thought process. So I have dropped things off at your door before, right? We do business. We exchange, right? Yeah. So that's fine. Well, for this case, I was dropping off a $135, okay, external hard drive that I just purchased for the company. Okay, so hear me out. The last time I had dropped things off, I did not knock. Why? Because your two dogs started barking. So I didn't think I needed to alert you. And we had talked about that actually on a conversation after that. And you had mentioned that, oh, I heard you because the dogs barked. So now you tell me a bit of information. As I was dropping off the $135 external hard drive in the middle of broad daylight at your door, I didn't hear anything, right? And you said that your dogs are sleeping. So I was like, well, I need for him to know that. I knocked on the door once and I left.
Text. Like, do you also, like, when you're picking somebody up, do you also honk the horn outside on the street too to let them know you're there? Or do you not just text?
Honk is different than dropping off a $135 external
you
hard
just
drive.
text me. You saw I was home. You saw my car was there.
Nobody knows. Like, you cannot lump me, and I take offense to this. You cannot lump me into your average Amazon or FedEx or UPS guy.
But I am.
No, you cannot. That is not true because I am dropping a piece. It wasn't packaged, right? There was no package.
We talked on the phone 20 minutes ago.
And so I put it there. I knocked and I left. It's not my fault that your dogs are cued by noise. That's not my issue.
Every dog is cued by noise, especially
no, not every dog. That is a false statement. But I put it on the door. I knocked once and I left. It wasn't like bang, 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 bang. I didn't ring the doorbell.
This is my constant battle with delivery people, especially in apps when you I'm not done, especially in apps when you have the ability to drop notes. I live in the back part of a building, and so I have to tell people, here's my door, not the other door. Please don't knock to excite the dogs. Because when you get food delivered in the app, it says your food has been delivered. Pick it up at the front door. So you go get it. I see that, Zach. But what's wrong with sending me a text when we just talked about it on the phone 20 minutes before, and you said, I'm going to drop it off in the next 20 minutes. I said, I'm home.
It's easy.
Just text me. Text me. It would be the same.
I knock once I leave. Anything over $25, especially over $100,
every
knock
time,
and leave.
every time I've dropped something off at your door, I've texted you and said, just dropped it off on the
If
step.
you would have knocked, I don't care.
I do care because
Right?
it's
There's
driving
no
me
way for me
crazy.
to know that. This is like a personal shade that nobody knows. Like the FedEx guys don't know that. The Amazon guys don't know about your preference.
Knocking is
Like
so
a uniform American worldly society thing to do.
but today with our phones and with everything being electronic, you get a notification every time food's delivered or every time a package is delivered, whether it's in your mailbox or on your front step or by one of your friends that you know, somebody you know, you text them and say, hey, it's there. You don't honk the horn when
I
you're
didn't honk.
I was
A honk and a knock are two completely different. And you cannot, that is apples and effing kiwis, my friend.
But you text me.
A honk is the worst thing, right? A honk is when you're a kid and your mother honks because she has groceries and your ass has to pause your video game, run downstairs, and help take in the groceries. A honk is not a knock.
It's very similar to me.
No,
Just
no,
text.
zero similarities.
Use the $1,000 phone that you have in your pocket and say, I just dropped it off. And that's it.
That is ridiculous. That is so ridiculous.
Knocking.
If you were to ask me, hey man, in the future, just text me because this now really infuriates you and your entire household, I will respect this. But no. To bring me lumped into your shade on a Wednesday in front of our American public viewer,
Zach, I've brought this up on the show before, and so I thought you were trolling me. I thought you were literally doing that out of a joke. So I
was just running company errands. I had no thought of trolling you. I was trying to deliver your hard drive.
And I appreciate the delivery of the hard drive, and I'm excited to be able to use it so we can use our new computers. But again, like, just text. Hey, it's there. You knew I was home. Just text me. It's there. The hard drive's there. It's not hard. We don't use smoke signals. We don't send pigeons. We use text messages and email notifications.
I think it's weak shit. I didn't even see this comment, but literally as I was thinking about it, I think this is weak shade in my personal opinion. But you know, it's your shade. It's not mine.
All right. Well, that's throwing shade here on the show. Look, I knew as soon as it happened, I was like, well, we're talking about that tomorrow. Because right after I got both dogs calmed down from barking their head off.
Just let them outside.
I mean, then yes. I mean, I did. But I was also in the middle of
problem solved.
Look, I was in the middle of doing
it because they get outside time, right? Surprise outside time. You get an extra hard drive delivered right to your door.
But I also don't want to. But I'm also a considerate human being and don't just let my dogs outside while they're barking their heads off to annoy everybody else outside. Like my neighbors.
Go outside, they'll run around. Like that's how you call. That's the idea of calming them down, right?
OG
so
says
they can investigate what that noise was.
Right. So they're going to go outside and bark at it because that's what dogs do.
Not all dogs. That's your dogs, right? So you're lumping dogs into a generic term, and that is incorrect. Not all dogs bark. It's just wrong.
Dogs that bark at knocks on the door and doorbells. Even
my
doorbells.
Dog does not, Austin. Tuxedo does not bark at door knocks. He does not.
Okay,
and that's okay. I'm just trying to explain. I understand. Strokes.
But you're right. I get that. But dogs in general who bark, some dogs don't bark very much. Both of my dogs are very vocal dogs, and we think it's hilarious because it is funny.
That's fine. Again,
but
you raise your children or your dogs the way you want to raise them. I raise them my way. But I'm just saying, not all dogs are the same. Now, all dogs do go to heaven, but not all dogs are the same. So
right. I didn't say, but dogs bark. Like that's what they do.
Really is I appreciate that. So now I can get to the door and get that external hard drive in the safety of my own home.
You could have texted me, the same thing would have happened, and my dogs would have stayed napping. You disrupted their nap.
Actually, to knock and
leave. Really, I feel like you need to apologize to Sophie and Bella for disrupting their naps.
That unfortunately will not occur. unfortunately.
All right. Well, that's throwing shade. Great show today. We've been going an hour and a half, it seems like, consistently because there's so much to talk about with knocking on doors and the Vols. And we know that will not end when it comes to the Vols drama and with what's happening with this AD and coaching search. So we'll be back tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning is a Titans Thursday. We've got some Mike Vrabel topics, OC, DC searches for the Titans coaching staff. AJ Brown goes live on Instagram, high on anesthesia after knee surgery. So a lot to talk about tomorrow on Titans Thursday, as well as the Magic Bucket. So we're gonna have a good Wednesday, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning.